Does anyone really do this?
It's a new topic today on the podcast. It's new for me. It's going to be new for the audience.
The insurer can tell you at what age an individual will die.
There's a lot of myths that goes around.
I can tell you this much.
How can we avoid this?
It's already too late. No one has the time for it. It's a complicated process. Educating them is I wouldn't say it's a struggle, but it is kind of challenging. We can go as far as they want us to go. These guys are the math scientists.
Everyone cares about.
I've seen claims that shouldn't be paid. They just didn't know about. Technology is definitely a key. They've got no clue and they have no idea. Wow, I didn't really think about that one. That's a really, really good question.
Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of the AI Business Show, the show where you'll best learn about business, tech, entrepreneurship. Today, the topic of our interview is a little bit special. It's about insurance. I think everyone cares about insurance. So, Fadi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ahmed. Really appreciate being on your show, on your podcast.
Fadi, as I said, it's a new topic today on the podcast. It's about insurance. Everyone cares about insurance, whether it's individuals, businesses. I think everyone again cares about insurance. I want to know kind of your career and how you got here, how you got into this world of insurance and your previous career.
Okay, excellent. No, good question. Wow, I think I got into insurance back in 2002. If you want to be honest, after I got married, I had five brother-in-laws who were living in California. So when I moved to California, all of them had their own, whether they were either independent brokers or agents. So they kind of said, hey, why don't you just try it out? I worked with them for a good year, learned so much, and then opportunities came knocking. I joined a few companies, did so well, went into the sales force, did great, and just kept growing and growing with it. And then fast forward, here we still are. I've diversified a bit, in between. I went a bit into real estate, mortgages, did a bit of life insurance and general insurance in a commercial, individual. So, and yeah, so and this is it. So it was more from family.
Okay. Like, what is insurance?
Well, that's quite a, we talk about insurance every day, but it's like, what is insurance? Look, to try and put it as simple as possible, it's a contract between an individual or let's say an entity and an insurance company, whereby the insurance company agrees to make the individual or the entity whole again after they've suffered a loss. Okay, so meaning, you're driving a car, let's say you swerve off the road, hit a pole. Now you've damaged your car for $10,000. You've damaged the pole, need another, say, $3,000 to fix. So you're down $13,000. The insurance company's job now is to bring you back to the position you were in before you suffered the loss. Make up that $13,000 for you for a very small premium that you pay them. So they're not supposed to give you less than 13. You're not supposed to be worse off, and you're not supposed to obviously profit from the incident that happened. To bring you back to the same position you're in before the loss. So that's the simplest way I can put it for you.
Okay, and we're gonna go deep into insurance and like the risk and all, but I have two questions here on what you said previously. You were in California before, now I think you're in Dubai, is that right?
Yes, correct. So I was in California. That's where I learned everything there is to know, honestly, about insurance. I've been with several companies over there. So that's where I pretty much learned the industry.
Right. So my question is, now that you're in Dubai, what were the differences you saw in how insurance is in Dubai or in the MENA region and how it is in California?
Well, look, that's a good one. In fact, you see, in the US, you got 50 states, and I'll tell you, every state is complete, is different somewhat from the other states. So imagine so it's not like if I can do insurance in California and I can just go, say, to Arizona or Chicago, anywhere else, and just start transacting insurance. I got to start, I got to get re-licensed and so forth. So never mind that. So coming to this region, look, it's the difference is obviously it's a much more mature market there. It's a lot more regulated there. Over here, though, I've been here 8 years, and in those 8 years, it's grown so much over here. I mean, you can see the market has definitely matured. All the major insurers are operating out of Dubai. In fact, the last company I worked with, which was a multinational, we were operating in 14 countries from the UAE. This is what I really how quick they've matured. And be honest with you again, it's different, but it's, I can say, just as I want to say exciting is the word, but it is interesting. It's
Okay.
definitely maturing over here.
Okay. Going back to insurance, you said the insurance company gets you up, let's say you get into an accident, gets you up from the hole to pay you, let's say, the 13,000 you're owed. How does this insurance company identify a risk? Like when they're looking at the risk management, at their business model, of course, an insurance company doesn't want to lose money. So how is the balance going there in terms of risk management and identifying the risk that the insurance company is going to take on?
Okay, look, that's a good question. It's a kind of an actually detailed question, to be honest with you. Look, identifying a magic risk, it's complex, and it's always ongoing with insurers. And insurers rely a lot on data. Data analysis is key. If I shift into, say, the world, I think a good example is life insurance. If you were to go buy a life insurance policy today, young man like you, um, I'll tell you 70%, the 70% of the time, the insurer can tell you at what age an individual will die,
Oh,
really.
wow.
Because they collect, they know obviously the age, where you live, what you do for a living, what your hobbies are. Again, obviously, smoke, don't smoke, smoke or not. Again, I may have said your health. So they look at, when you answer those questions, there's a reason why they ask you. Now, these guys have years and years, I mean, decades of data that they plot in charts. So eventually, after all these years, that's why if you go buy, say, a $1 million life insurance policy, it probably costs you could cost you just $50 a month. But that's because they know you're probably going to live for another 40, 50 years.
Right.
You see what I mean? It's all about collecting data, and then use this on any type of line of insurance, whether you go to property, even motor. See, and if you want me to, to do a comparison, if I take your, now I can't, if I'm motor here, the region is pretty simple when it comes to collecting data. If you're in the region here and
Right.
you go buy a, I'll just ask you, how old are you? Do you have when were you licensed? What nationality? What's the value of your vehicle? And that's pretty much it. Go to the States, for example, try get motor insurance. They're gonna rate you based on your zip code, based on if you're male or female, based if you're married or not. Obviously, your driving record is looked at. If you got any violations, if you got any accidents, they're going to look at the year, make, and model of your vehicle, the number of miles you drive. Even your profession could give you a discount, because all this is based on data. Now, I'm not going to say if it's men or women that are more likely to have an accident, but if you change an applicant from male to female, you see the price jump a little bit, but it does
Okay.
jump because one is more likely to have an accident than the other. Married people are deemed to be safer drivers because they have more responsibility waiting for them than a single driver, and. So again, it's all about collecting data, analyzing data, seeing where those trends are, okay, and then being able to obviously address that risk and picking up the premium for that risk.
Okay.
The other way that they also do it is they underwrite. You have an underwriter whose job is to basically tell you the criteria of how they'll cover insurance, what's covered, what's not covered, and what type of risks they're willing to take, and what type of risk they'd rather avoid or isn't in line, and so forth. And this goes for all lines of insurance, be it property, be it a liability type policy, aviation, whatever. So again, and we can just go on. I mean, again, you got risk assessments that insurers do on certain assets. If you were to go and insure, say, a hotel that has a value of, I don't know, $500,000, let's say, they're going to send their engineers and they're going to inspect this hotel, take a look, are all their fire, safety systems in place, and so forth. And, all their, so they want to make sure that this is and they have processes in place, because what they want to do is ensure that you're doing everything you can to avoid having a loss.
Okay.
Because what they want, you don't say, well, I got insurance, so never mind firefighting safety. Don't just take them down, don't turn them on if we have a
Right.
fire. No, it doesn't work that way. So exactly. So there are many different strategies that they use to assess.
Okay. On the insurance company part, what are the challenges you've seen? And you run Ditek today. What are challenges you see on your part in terms of insuring other companies or other individuals?
Look, Ditek is not an insurance company.
Uh,
So what we do is servicing. We are an outsourced managers. We actually manage our clients, and we help them select a broker and then
Okay.
go to. But again, look, from sitting, because I have worked with insurers in the past. Again, for me, one of the key challenges really is just being able to connect with the client, really, at the end of the day, being able to always have real time access to what's happening. So, look, I'll give you an example. When I worked with one of the companies here in Dubai quite a few years back, one thing that really helped me was that I always gave insurers real time info as to when something critical happened. And um, it doesn't have to be but can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I could hear you.
Sorry, because I just lost you. So it didn't really have to be incident that happened. It was more like even if we've had certain systems for a while, our immediate contact the insurer would let them know, look, we've taken out certain safety systems down. This is the measures we're taking in the meantime. Are you okay with this? And then they'd say yes, they really appreciate us reaching out to them. And if they had any additional comments, would follow through. Now, in reality, not many people do that. Not many people are very proactive. So trying to keep, so trying to, insurers are not really worried about what they know that's right. They're more worried about what they don't know.
Jumping on, we spoke about the insurance company side. I want to go to the other side, which is the companies. First of all, what does Ditek do?
So what we do is we are basically, we'll say we're insurance managers outsourced. So what is that a lot of companies have a risk department, risk insurance department. And a lot of them don't, especially small to mid-sized companies. They just don't have the budget to hire someone to look after the insurance. So what they do is they have their finance department deal with the general lines of insurance, the non-medical and life, and HR does medical and life. But in reality, they're not, they don't, this is insurance is there at the end of the day. Okay. So we do, we say, look, we work with such companies, so they hire us on retainer, or we make with them. We manage their insurance portfolio, so we act department. So we go inside, we understand the culture, how they operate, so that we can help brokers and insurers place insurance on their behalf. We can go as far as they want us to go, so we can do the whole scope. We can do their budgets, we can do their processes for them, manage their claims, place their policies. So every client can tell us what they want from us, and we can act as a fully functional insurance department for them.
So basically, your insurance as a service for different companies.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't want exactly. So a company hires us to act, to be their insurance manager. So rather than on full time and pay full salaries and all their benefits that come with it, and you pay us a fraction of the fee, and we'll give you that entire service as well.
Okay. How do you make sure you're staying up to date with all the different insurance regulations and different aspects of the changing industry you're in?
Well, I mean, look, this one, because we're in touch with insurance companies, we're in touch with brokers, we network a lot. So anytime, plus with all the insurance policies we've placed, so anytime there's a change, when there is one, we are notified by by the insurers, by the brokers, and so forth. We catch up with the latest news. So that's pretty that's pretty straightforward. I mean, you don't really get, or regulations day to day, but when they do happen, we are made aware of it by. And plus, with me, I work with at least 4 or 5 major brokers, so I'm always up to date with what's happening.
Okay. I think part you get educated, but your clients, some of the clients don't have the necessity education about insurance, and there's a lot of myths that goes around. How do you make sure you're educating your client? What are the myths you commonly hear about the insurance industry that you need to educate your client on and teach your client, enable for them to understand the industry better and help them guide them in the right direction?
Look, that's a really good question. I mean, I'll tell you this. It is extremely important in any industry that you always educate your client. Because it just makes it so much easier. So what you see, look, we basically, once the client hires us, they put us to be there. Now we take the front seat, and now we manage all the insurance policies for them. And look, believe it, when I tell you, no matter from what I've seen, it's to the clients, usually it's, for them, they just want to save money. really. Look, they say, look, we trust you to make sure that we've got the insurance, that what we need to have in place is in place, it's structured properly, it fits our type of operation, but please save us money. Now, to go in there and try, and insurance is not something that you can really just, I can't spend 5 minutes with you and then you say, oh, great, I got it. It is just like almost, if you go to finance or if you go into marketing or HR, it's something that you've got to spend time. So for me, I'd say it's extremely important that they just understand the major risks. Look, these are the major problems we have, what we're going to do to cover it. And this is why we need to buy these insurance policies, and this is why you need to have them in place, and this is why it's going to cost you so much, because we want that all your, you've got all your risks are covered. We can't just buy, a certain policy with so many restriction. So it is, I'd say educating them is, I wouldn't say it's a struggle, but it is kind of challenging. But when they hire us, they do it for reasons, because they just want to make sure someone is now leading this line for them.
Okay. They hired you. They're working with their insurance company, with you being in the middle. Then a claim happens. Most of the time, the myth we hear is that the insurance company wants to avoid paying the claim or wants to get out of paying a claim. How do you manage this relationship over here?
Look, this again, it's a very interesting topic. I'd say it's not that insurance companies don't want to pay your claims. Look, when you go with an A standard insurer, when you go with global insurers, they will pay. Trust me, I've seen claims that shouldn't be paid. Okay, I mean, I can tell you this much. And if you go with substandard insurers, like when you go to insurers who are just premium, price based. So if everyone else is, say, quoting you $100,000, and then the next one's quoting you 120, and the next one's quoting you 150, and then suddenly someone's quoting you 40,000, then, and this is where you go, well, you get what you really pay for. So when you go with your global insurer, with your A-rated insurance companies, don't forget, it's not that they don't want to pay you. It's your look. This is why I say it's so important that when you engage with an insurer directly, or when you go through a broker, that you really understand what's covered and what's not covered. And I said this, I think maybe in one of my videos and LinkedIn, I've said this maybe a few of my posts. It's so important because at the end of the day, when an insurer issues you a policy, if the policy clearly mentions something is not covered, and then you experience that loss, contractually, they're not obligated to pay you because it's written there as excluded. So this is why I say it's so important that when you buy the policy, you understand all your risks, you discuss it with your broker, okay? And then when your broker goes to place the insurance, they try and remove as many of these exclusions as they can. And sometimes there are certain exclusions that you just can't, there are certain coverages you can't have in a certain policy. Therefore, you have to go buy a separate policy to cover what your original policy won't cover. You see what I mean? For example, if you were to buy a property insurance, okay, first and foremost, you see cyber risk is not covered under property. So then you go a separate policy called cyber risk. And under cyber risk, you might have certain risks not covered, and they keep, and they branch off. So that's why you can't just go say, oh, I got property insurance, everything is covered. No. Believe me, I've gone to companies that don't have risk managers. They've got their liability or their property policy. They just bought it off the shelf of an insurance company because it's the cheapest one. It had tons of restrictions, and they had no clue. So when I sat with them, I said, but did you know that this and this and this and this and that are not covered? Like, oh, we didn't know. Well, no one really paid attention to it.
Okay, that makes sense. You mentioned something about the A standard and substandard. I'm a company. How do I choose the right broker? How do you help me choose the right broker? What are the criteria in place?
Okay, so we're talking about now a broker, not an insurance company, because the broker places insurance. Yeah, the broker is the middle man, say the company.
I want to get to know both. How do I choose the right broker, and then how do I choose the right insurance company?
Okay, look, so first of all, when it goes to broker, look, you have to do your research. So find out who the depends. Again, every company is different. You go, again, it could be a small local company, it could be a multinational. Naturally, if you're a multinational company, you want to deal with a broker that has also who extends to the countries that you work in, whether they have direct offices in the other countries, whether they have network partners who can transact on their behalf. So you want someone that can have reach out to all the countries you're in. And this is something you can do a simple internet research, who are the top 10 companies in the world, who are the top 10 companies, here locally. And then you can kind of, you can read all the feedback. So the technology is so easy nowadays just to understand who these brokers are. Once you've identified them, you really want to sit with them and you want to make sure that they have experts in your industry. Because not every person, no one person can do all lines of insurance. You can't. You've got your property, you've got your casualty lines, you've got your specialty lines, you've got your financial lines insurance. So depending on what industry, and let's say in the construction industry, so then you speak to a few brokers, try to understand how deep they go into construction. Like how, is this what construction is pretty straightforward. But when you sit with the team and try and see if any of them, for example, were past engineers, for example, because if that's the case, then that's a plus for you, or how much experience they have in understanding what it is that you do. Once you've identified, so if you've spoken to 5, then you might narrow it down to 3, then you choose top 3 you feel comfortable with. Once you've done this, again, you can just sit down with the actual, don't just speak to management, because management will come talk, they look, everything is nice, but they're not your team. They're not the guys who deal with you day to day. Right. Sit with the team who will work with you, see how you feel about them. Do you feel you can converse with them? And because it's all about customer service in the end. And then when you've removed one and you've narrowed down to your last 2, I'd say work with both of them for about 90 days. So you've got your open insurance policies, give both of them like different types of insurance policies and switch them around halfway through. Okay. And just give yourself time to see how they respond, how their response times are, how accurate. And then once you kind of feel you're leaning in one way, now you've got the broker that you really have vetted and you feel, okay, I think this is going to work for me pretty well. And of course, call some of their current clients as well, and ask them questions, like really give them what concerns you, and then shoot that to the client and see what they say. Once you've got the broker in place and you've researched this broker, and you obviously vetted them, these are good brokers. They're, they could be the largest or the top 5 or whatever. Then naturally they will have insurance companies that they will work with and insurance companies that they will not work with. And when a broker tells you we don't want to work with a certain insurance company, you need to listen and just say, okay, you don't want to work with these guys. Okay. And then obviously everything they have might be A, B, depends. It might be a local insurer, it might be something more global. Again, it all depends on the type of lines of insurance you have, but just make sure the team you hire to represent you when they go out there understand your industry. They have good knowledge about your industry, because the more they know, then the more they can help you. They know what risks to look out for, what the type of things could go wrong. They could be proactive with you and so forth.
Okay. You talk about type of risks to look out for, and I think one type of risk that most people don't talk about is environmental and climate risk, including first of all, why don't companies pay attention to that environmental and climate risk?
It depends what industry we're talking about. In certain industries, they absolutely have to. It's the law. So you don't pay attention, you're going to. I think what we're looking at more is probably like climate change, maybe.
Okay.
Again, it all really depends on what industry you're really in. If in the agriculture industry, for example, in certain countries, crops really depend on weather, how much rain they have, and the temperatures, and there's a lot of parameters that have to be in place. And if the environment starts to change, right, and these farms suffer, or certain industries start to suffer losses because of climate change, then absolutely, then that obviously then that's going to be what's the right? I won't say it's going to be. It's not really a catastrophe, but again, they start suffering losses, and it all depends. Look, it all depends where you are, because in some countries you can't avoid this. It's clear you have to do something about it. In countries that haven't been impacted so hard yet, but it looks like it's coming towards them, those are the ones that tend to just say, leave it till next time, leave it till next time. So they tend to push it away. Okay. And they little bit late, by then it might be very hard to get them on board, or the premiums might start going high. Whereas had they joined earlier, it would have been so much easier.
Okay. And can any insurance company deal with these type of insurance claims, or is it insurance companies that specialize in environmental insurance or climate change insurance?
No, climate change, like when we talk about climate change, of course, these are specialist type of companies. Yes, they're not your traditional. I mean, if you were to buy a normal if you were to buy a normal insurance policy now, your traditional property insurance, it might not cover it might not give you something, it wouldn't cover against climate, or be very restricted. So when a traditional insurance policy needs a trigger, like if you bought property insurance, right? That what you need a trigger for it to activate a claim. So if you have a fire, that's a trigger. Then we ask, well, what caused the fire? If what caused the fire is covered by your policy, then you're covered. If you have a weather-related damage, that's covered. In some countries, earth movement, earthquakes, because it's so rare that insurers might agree to cover it up to a certain extent or in full, depends. If you have floods, again, if you're not really in a flood zone in some countries or in some areas, insurance companies might agree to cover. You see what I mean? So but if you go and tell your insurer, let's say you operate a theme park, for example, and you tell them that, this year I lost 2 months because of heat, or because of, normally it doesn't rain in September and October, but because of climate change, it seems that we rain in September and October. We don't have any damages, but people didn't come, so I want money. Well, they're not going to give you money. They can't pay you because there was no trigger. Rain alone with no damage is not a trigger for them to pay you
Okay.
out. If rain caused damage and that damage caused you to shut down your parks, then that's a different discussion. But then what you do is you buy it as separate policy, more related to climate change, and then your trigger is very specific. You have to say, if it rains outside of these, like in my peak month, if there is rain and if it shuts down my parks for so many days, then you're going to compensate me with a certain dollar value.
Okay.
You see,
Wow.
so these are specific parameters. You have to specify parameters, and then if that specific incident hits, then they pay you out what you've agreed. No investigation has to take place. It just has to be verified by a third party that you agreed upon, the National Weather Center or whatever it might be. So these are specific types.
These are questions, or these are details that a lot of people don't know about. Me as a company, I may not know about that these triggers exist, or these little questions and details exist. How can you help me ask the right questions when I'm going into choosing the right climate change insurer for my company?
Actually, it's not questions you would ask.
Okay.
Your broker or your insurer will be asking you questions,
Okay.
because they're placing it for you. So if you were to go with a broker, traditionally they need to understand, again, depends who they're sitting with. If your organization has a risk and insurance professional, then fantastic, because then they will deal directly with them. But if not, okay, it's not the end of the world. It's just that they need to really try to understand how you operate.
Okay.
They need to understand where your strengths and weaknesses are, so they can build, again, that program around your operations.
Jumping on from climate change, there's a lot of small businesses, SMEs. What are gaps you see in the risk profile in terms of insurance?
So look, every company is different. I mean, different industries, different risks. So there's no like common gaps per se. I can't pinpoint, well, this coverage, many people don't have it. But what I can tell you is that, again, SMEs who don't have a risk insurance professional, when I usually sit with them and I look at their policies and we break it down, yes, we find that there are lots of coverages that they could have had at no extra cost that they just didn't know about. And yes, they have but what happens is brokers, you see, the company has to know how to manage their broker. You really have to, if you just leave them alone, there's only because they have, no one's giving them direction. If you don't direct them, then they can only do so much. So what happens? It becomes transactional. You don't communicate with them unless you have a claim. If you don't have a claim, you don't communicate with them until it's time to renew your policy. So a whole year goes by. They don't know what you're doing. They send you your renewal forms, fill out those forms, let us know if anything is changing your risk profile. You give it to them, they give you prices, and that's pretty much it. You see what I mean? So that's just so what happens then when we go in and we take a look, we realize there are just lots of missing details. And that's only because they didn't, the way they communicate with us, they didn't even communicate with the brokers. I don't know why. I don't know how they selected the broker. And again, it's not about saying who's, it's not the broker's fault. It's just this is how the relationship was. So yes, I find lots of gaps, and those gaps are you don't really think much of them until you have the accident, and then you're like, oh, only I knew. But by then it's already too late.
How can we avoid how can we avoid these gaps?
So what I'll say is, look, to an SME that doesn't have a risk and insurance manager, or actually any company, if you don't really have one, it's really not very difficult. If you form a committee or a team, whatever you want to call them, and you all sit in a room together, right? You have your leadership, you've got your technical experts, regardless of what industry you're in, and you just pretty much pour out everything that could possibly go wrong. Let's say if you're in a restaurant, for example, you operate a restaurant, you bring the chef. Chef, what keeps you up at night? What happens? What tells you, oh, the fridge every now and then shuts off, and if it shuts off for more than 15 minutes, we'll lose all our products, and then it's worth so much money, for example. So what do? We replace the fridge. Well, guess what? I can't afford to replace the fridge right now. So, so this is one. Then you talk to the people, for example, who are cleaning, what are you facing? So if you just pretty much get everyone to just talk about the little detail, this operation, so what could go wrong.
Right.
And now this discussion with your broker. And now your broker already has probably written many policies for restaurants, so they already know what to expect. So first they'll address your concerns, and they'll say, okay, grow, yes, here, there, great. Some they might tell you we can transfer to insurance. Some they might tell you, look, these items can't be insured, but this is what you can do in order to mitigate the risk. And then they'll obviously expand that for you and give you more. But it's all about you communicating internally, and always agreeing that every 3 months or every 6 months or at least once a year, we're going to sit together, we're going to talk about what happened, what did we see, and so forth. So if you keep communicating amongst yourselves, at least, that's the least you can do. But does anyone really do this? No one has the time for it. In fact, yesterday I sat with an interesting client. They know they have insurance, but
Right.
they don't have, because they knew there are certain lines of insurance they have to have because they have to by law submit, and it's check in the box. Now, what coverage is inside, if it works, if it doesn't work, what the restrictions, they've got no clue, and they have no idea. They just pay the premiums and that's it.
Wow.
You see, so
okay.
This is what I see, because again, not many people truly understand it, and to them it's a complicated process. And I get it. When I didn't know insurance, like, whoa, I didn't even know what ability policy was, So yeah, I can see it from there, and that's why where we come in to take that load from them and help them, and we show them, we ask questions. So what would happen in this scenario? Then they'd freak out. We'll say, well, guess what? You don't have coverage, but we can do this coverage for you.
Okay, that's coverage for you.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, I want to ask some kind of fun questions. If I'm a new guy, I'm young, I'm 18 years old, and I want to get into the insurance industry. I don't want to go probably be an agent or start an insurance broker. What other types of kind of companies or startups I could start in this insurance industry world?
And if you don't want to work with insurance brokers or insurance companies,
Yeah, like if I'm a young entrepreneur, I'm starting fresh into this industry, what type of businesses I could start in this industry?
well, it really all depends, honestly, in like what do you want to do? Do you want to work in the sales force? Do you want to work more inside, like, do you want to work with underwriting? Do you want to be an actuary? The actuary, actually, these guys are very interesting. These guys are the math scientists. They're the ones that actually put the science behind how premiums are derived. So it really depends on what you want to really focus on, right, and where your strengths are. And then based on this, again, so you could look, when you work with an insurance broker, for example, you're exposed to many different insurers, different clients, because the broker works for the client, and then the client, and then they place insurance on behalf of them. So they're the middleman. So it's very interesting how they do it. When you work with an insurance company, you're working with one company only, and then you learn as per their guidelines, as per their rules as well. Again, it all depends where you see yourself fitting. It's like working with a bank. Are you going to work in treasury? Are you going to work in investment banking? Are you going to work in mortgages, credit cards, loans, and so forth? So it all depends on which branch of insurance you really want to go into.
What is the industry lacking? Where could the industry improve more?
Look, I think this is a really, again, it's quite a question here. Look, I think if I was to look at this region, I'm thinking more of technology.
Okay.
Although I think technology is beginning to come in again. I mean, like I said, in the last 8 years, I just saw an instant explosion right now. So many insurtech companies are coming out, lots of great solutions, so now it's beginning to happen. Over here. So again, I think it's just a matter of if I was to look, when I look at how insurance companies rate and how insurance company price in the region, I'd say there are gaps when it comes to picking premium. Because when I see how they're written, say abroad, there's a lot of attention to detail, and even the pricing has to, because it's all regulated. So whereas here, there's a lot more flexibility, which is good, but is it good for insurers? I don't know. I haven't really dived that deep with them.
Okay.
But technology is definitely a key. So just if you had asked me this question maybe 6 months earlier, I would have definitely been, technology. But now I'm seeing so much happening with it. So it's definitely growing. It's adapting very fast.
Okay. My last question today, if let's go out of the insurance industry, if you were to start young, start a business on your own, or if you were to start something now with all the knowledge you've had, what is a business you'd start today?
Wow, I didn't really think about that one. That's a really, really good question. Honestly speaking, if I was to go in, I believe it would be a combination of insurance, real estate, and mortgages kind of deal, to be honest with you. These are lines I've worked in anyway. But for me, when I talk about insurance in general, the reason why we do what we do is because we saw a gap here. Because I've noticed that in every company I've worked with, we've managed to save them a significant amount of money while improving their policies. And this is not just me talking, it's just because no one really paid it. It's not that I'm doing anything out of the ordinary. It's just the fact that companies are just not paying too much attention to something. So when we give it the attention that it needs, it becomes almost automatic. I'd say 9 out of 10 times we improve on it and we save a significant amount of money. So this is why I just started this now. Before we always worked with companies, but bringing all my data together, and I said, this is where the gap is, and this is where we're going into. It's only been 6 months that we've been operating.
Okay. Fadi, I love this episode. I think it's new for me. It's going to be new for the audience. Not everyone has the deep knowledge you have about the industry, so it was a pleasure having you on. Any last words? Where could people follow more of what you were doing? Are you hiring? Feel free to announce anything you want to announce.
We're not hiring yet, to be honest. Our business model is very, very simple. But definitely, if we are, then I'll change my LinkedIn profile. I really do thank you. I think what you're doing is great. If you want to do a catch up in the future, do let me know and expand on what we discussed, so we can maybe go on more specifics, types of industries. But I really appreciate you having me on this podcast, Ahmed.
Thank you, Fadi.